You alright folks, and welcome back. You might have heard that in a little over a week, Wrath's final PvP season is due to come to a close, and you might also be wondering, why would I want to talk about that? I think I've made it pretty clear on this channel, I'm not overly inclined towards battering my fellow player. It's just not my wheelhouse. This is true, however, the ending of a season usually poses a couple of questions for those of us in the PvE world as well, and I want to talk about the potential repercussions of this announcement. So, on April 15th, Season 8 will come to a close, and an off-season period will be in effect until Season 9 goes live, which is basically just Phase 1 CATA. And this is interesting, because if we take a look at TBC Classic, the final season of that expansion, Season 4, came to an end as the Wrath pre-patch hit. It lined up quite nicely, and generally the start and finish of a PvP season lines up to a degree with new patches and phases and whatnot. It only makes sense. Give the PvPers some stuff as well as the raiders out there. And that is where the questions start to crop up, because even if there is an off-season period, it does make you wonder if the pre-patch is actually that far away. Now, at the minute, a lot of folk, and to a degree myself included, do suspect that we'll see a May pre-patch followed by a June release for CATA, though admittedly I do not think the game to be anywhere near a state that would be possible at the moment, and it would not surprise me to see a July/August release to make sure everything actually worked. So if the pre-patch is only a couple of weeks off, we really need to see the beta shift into high gear, because it is not yet a launch-ready product. Not that that's ever really stopped them before. But for those of you not in the beta or keeping abreast of developments, we've only just gotten post-AT content, and a lot of features are missing and as of yet untested. Bugs that were known about when the beta went live a month ago are still in place, which is having quite the knock-on effect for testing classes and doing dungeons and other endgame shenanigans. For example, I mentioned in a recent video that Frost DK is having issues with its resources, in particular due to a spec passive just not working at all, and essentially it made that spec unplayable. I went unholy, and early on I was fine, but now I'm max level and spent a few hours messing around with it and trying to get dungeons done. That's also revealed some serious issues with passives and talents outright not working. It's like they've been switched off. The pet bar is also an ephemeral legend at this point. It's been missing for most of the beta, and if it wasn't just outright missing, it wandered off every 5 minutes like a drunk toddler. Now, those aren't the only issues, they're just a couple of them, but pet classes in particular have been unplayable to varying degrees because you just can't control your pets. And in the case of hunters, pet happiness is still in the game, and it goes down. Some are reporting it to be a visual-only bug, but others are stating it's actually still working. So, if you don't know, pet happiness is the feature whereby you feed your pet, its happiness goes up, and so too does its damage. When that happiness goes down, it will then impact the output of said pet. But in the CATA beta at the minute, there's no way to raise it again, as the associated ability has been updated to its Cataclysm form, so it no longer affects this mechanic, but the mechanic itself is still affecting all hunters. If this isn't a visual bug, as some have reported, it's kind of a Princess and the Pea moment, something that appears ultimately small and inconsequential, but has a really quite noticeable knock-on effect. Again, it's something that has been in the beta since testing began, and is just one example of something that we the testers have been aware of since the first day of the beta, and are still trying to juggle, but it hasn't seen any sort of improvement. It's like death by 1,000 cuts, if you will. There are lots of smaller issues like this that you would have expected to have been dealt with, given how early people became aware of them and how long the beta has been out now. And frankly, the communication from Blizzard this beta has been appalling. We get a piddly update once in a blue moon with a minuscule known issues list that only acknowledges a fraction of the known issues that people on the beta have been shouting about since the damn thing went up. But do you know what? As easy as it is to say from my comfy chair, I'm gonna say it anyway, this whole thing just feels downright lazy at the moment, because if I were a betting man, I'd say it's almost as if the majority of the Classic team's time goes into trying to make SOD work, and CATA has been handed off to the unpaid intern being worked into oblivion. It's an afterthought, and the beta is doing nothing to prove otherwise at the moment. Having said that though, I'm not saying I expect every bug report I file to be immediately looked at and remedied within minutes. Of course not. But if the same bug I and the rest of the player base was dealing with 3 or 4 weeks ago is still causing issues, and all we hear from the boys in blue is, "We are aware that rejuvenation is not working correctly." Sorry. It does make me wonder as to what's going on, because we've had a couple of builds now, and very little appears to be actually changing. It goes back to what I said a while ago with this feeling somewhat alpha-ish. And while I'm on the subject of the beta, there is something I want to address quickly, because it's evident a fair number of folks in the comments, and people who've reached out to me in-game, because that started happening now, have no clue what the purpose of a beta actually is, and in fact seem to think it's some sort of early access mode. But there have been a not too small number of people who've cropped up in my whispers and said something to the effect of, "You moaned about X thing in the beta. Of course it's broken. It's beta. Get over it." Darlings, it's a testing environment. The whole point of being there is to test, critique, and give feedback. But right now, the biggest critique I have is that it feels like the feedback from the entire beta is just going in the office waste paper basket. Now, all of this would not be as trouser browning if it weren't for the fact the end of Wrath's final season is days away. If Blizzard actually gave us a release date, say for example it was in August, like the placeholder on or before date, there would be a minor grumble that it's too far away and it's taken too long. Yes, I'd agree, but the current state of the beta would make so much more sense. They would then actually have the time to fix things at snail's pace as they currently have been. But since that isn't the case, at least yet anyway, all we can do is speculate, and given this 4D chess move by Blizz, it really does lean into the speculation that the pre-patch is going to be next month at some point, assuming they aren't just trying to screw over the PvPers for reasons unknown. And if the pre-patch is next month, that could mean a couple of things. Either we're going to see a pretty long pre-patch, similar to the Cataclysm original and have things done in stages, or we're going to get a classic patented 2-week Wonder Rush with everything crammed into a few days at the end of the month with an early mid-June release. Simply put, a season end is portentous, whether you like it or not. It's the first sign of change, or Blizzard officially wrapping up a patch or expansion. The hoofbeats of the horsemen of the apocalypse, if you will. You know something is coming. It would just be nice to know when at this point. And yes, I want CATA to get here, of course I do. I am pretty much done in Wrath of the Lich King now, as are most folk. But I've said it before, I don't think anyone wants it to launch in a completely knackered state. The best way to put it, and hopefully visualise it for those out there who think, it's just classic, it's been done before, they should just rummage in their filing cabinets and pull out the old builds. Now, I'm sure they can do that to some degree for a few aspects of the game, but it is a completely different team pasting CATA onto the retail client with all of the issues that come with that. So I get it, it's not as simple as going into your save file and loading up something from 14 years ago. But, and it is a big but, say this was a brand new expansion never before seen. Say it was The War Within, and the prospect of the expansion going into pre-patch with the full launch a couple of weeks later was looming on the horizon. But we're in a state with numerous classes suffering from debilitating bugs. The new leveling and dungeon content has only just been released, and we have yet to test important expansion-defining features or a brand new profession that made it into the goddamn reveal trailer. 'Cause yeah, that's still not in the game, despite what the most recent blue post states. You'd be looking at each other going, launch, pre-patch, it's not ready, are you off your rocker? Which is basically me right now. This whole shebang just feels a touch too early, a mite premature, if you will. And obviously, yeah, we haven't gotten a date for the pre-patch yet, and this is just speculation. The only bit of concrete information we have as of right now is that Season 8 is coming to a close in a few days' time. And I could be very wrong, and the pre-patch and subsequent full launch could be months off, which again, given the state of the beta, makes perfect sense. But if that is the case, Blizzard have just ended the season for no discernible reason. They kept TBC Classic's final season going right up until the pre-patch hit, so it's not like they're unable to keep things going. They just made a post that said, in about a week's time, your season's done and you'll have to wait a bit for the next one. And that's a bit crap. And whilst what I'm about to say isn't a perfect one-to-one, I know, but if they turned around to the raiders of this game and said something similar along the lines of, Phase 4 is coming to an end, heroic raids will close, and their time-limited rewards will be unobtainable, but you're possibly going to be looking at a 3 to 4 month wait before anything new comes out, there would be serious hell to pay. Anyway, that's all I've got to say on that for now. As I said, could be wrong, probably am, but the final season's conclusion at the end of an expansion is usually the herald of new things to come, so it's only natural for the old speculation machine to get up and running. But hopefully, if the pre-patch is due to appear in the very near future, and with the launch of the ever-dreaded Phase 3 of SOD out of the way, they can kick things up a notch and we can see some actual, genuine development on the CATA beta over the next few weeks, and not just Blizzard tweaking the texture on a blade of grass, stuck in the teeth of a Tauren Deathwing 8 on his way out of the goddamn maelstrom. But if you'd let me know your own thoughts down below, and be so kind as to like, sub, share your pals and so on, that'll be grand. Have a good one, folks. Bye for now.